When Ibrahim Traore took over as Burkina Faso's leader, it wasn't an easy transition. It was more akin to going barefoot into a hurricane. There were people attempting to trip him up at every turn, some in front of him and some in the background. We're discussing dubious transactions, covert betrayals, and even schemes to have him removed. He was also working to restore peace to a nation that was frequently attacked by armed factions. The actual threat, however, wasn't necessarily those brandishing firearms. Some of the individuals attempting to overthrow him were unarmed, dressed in suits, grinned at meetings, and blended in with the throng. These were the insiders, spies, and covert agents that were collaborating with strong nations that opposed Traore's plan. This is where things start to get clever. Traore chose to follow money, the trail that never lies, rather than ghosts. He summoned a team of financial specialists and assigned them the task of looking through the bank accounts of former government figures. Ministers, generals, everyone. Then suddenly, they discovered it. Some of these former presidents have large sums of money in their accounts. We're talking about far more than anyone could possibly comprehend. What about the sources? To say the least, suspicious. The pieces fell into together quickly. More than 100 people were seeking to undermine the nation in secret. Their bank accounts were secured when their names were made public. No more pranks. However, it's not the whole tale. Traore must now make a decision regarding the individuals he has discovered. And safeguarding something greater is more important than simply retaining his seat. He is aware that the dream he is fighting for will perish if he does. And he isn't merely speculating. Burkina Faso has already learned that lesson from history. Consider the fate of Thomas Sankara, the nation's previous revolutionary leader, who was betrayed by his closest associates. Too soon gone. Traore has decided not to let that happen again. This leads us to a significant event that occurred on November 19, 2024. You must really enjoy this video if you're still watching it. Do you believe that Ibrahim Traore is a fortunate leader for the people of Burkina Faso? Please share your thoughts in the space provided for comments below. Suddenly, the head of Burkina Faso's economy, Dr. Abubakar Nakanobo, made a shocking revelation. He issued a significant directive that rocked the nation. The message is that anyone providing financial support to the rebels, whether overtly or covertly, was going to face a significant challenge. As you can see, these rebels are more than simply a bunch of fighters. They are the same people that have repeatedly attempted to remove Captain Ibrahim Traore, who is currently in charge of the nation. Their objectives are rather straightforward. They want to destabilize the government, create turmoil, and provide opportunities for strong outsiders to seize power. However, Traore's group had no intention of waiting around. His government swiftly froze the bank accounts of 113 individuals and 2 organizations with military assistance. Yes, 113. In an instant, their money was gone. Their activities stopped in their tracks. However, the names on that list, the kind of names no one expected, were what really surprised everyone, not simply the freeze. People who used to be close to authority, who shook hands in public, who grinned for photos, and who pretended to be devoted insiders. Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Sandaogo Damiba was the name that left everyone speechless. Yes, the Damiba, who in early 2022 ousted the elected president of Burkina Faso and seized power himself. It was short-lived though. Traore overthrew him a few months later, causing Damiba to escape into exile in Togo. Most people assumed he was retired, finished, and observing from a distance. Not even close, it turns out. Officials claim that Damiba has been very busy, allegedly giving foreign agents and rebel groups secrets in an effort to subvert the government. They even claim that he has been a part of a new scheme to completely destroy Traore. Negotiations are in progress to bring Damiba home and try him because the government now wants him back. Will they turn him over though? That remains to be determined. There are other well-known faces entangled in the web besides Damiba. The Burkina Faso government's most recent action has exposed a lengthy list of well-known individuals who are alleged to have attempted to undermine Traore's leadership from within. These are not only background complainers. They are prominent politicians, media personalities, former government officials, and military leaders who are purportedly connected to a covert organization that aims to upend the state. General Gibril Bassol was one of the most prominent names on that list. A man who was previously regarded as a significant figure in the diplomatic and military spheres. He was well known worldwide and previously served as the foreign minister of Burkina Faso. But he is currently in the news for rather opposite reasons, having been accused of siding with the wrong party. Alpha Bear, a former journalist who is now a politician, has strong connections to the media and a deft use of language. Rumor has it that someone has been acting as a puppet master, pulling strings, fabricating tales, and subtly inciting people against the administration that is attempting to stabilize the nation. Alpha Bear was the individual in question. Authorities believe he has been using his media connections and slick speech to convey statements intended to incite confusion and rage without actually brandishing a weapon. However, it's not just Bear who is feeling the heat. Next up is Armed Kaunda, a former top special forces commander who was renowned for his tactical acumen and strategic thinking. He is now suspected of employing those same abilities to covertly plot covert actions that would challenge Captain Traore's authority. He is also not alone. He has reportedly been joined by former military officers, such as Louis Didier Bemumi. And Romeo Owu comes next, who, according to officials, participated in covert schemes to seriously undermine the administration. However, this is no longer solely about individual players. The two influential insurgent factions accused of unimaginable acts of violence are part of the larger narrative that Traore's administration is pursuing. These organizations have terminated almost 26,000 people since 2015. Let that sink in. Families split apart, entire villages destroyed. Even more tragic is the fact that since Traore took power in late 2022, roughly 13,500 have occurred. Not to mention the devastation of schools, roads, clinics, and villages that were erased from the map as if they had never existed. Additionally, over 2 million individuals were left without anything after being forced to leave their homes. Money was the primary driver of these groups' continued existence. While the nation bulled, they survived thanks to covert finance and silent donations. Traore made the decision to target their wallets, the place where it hurts the most. The accounts of 113 individuals and a few organizations were frozen by the authorities, cutting off the money that enabled all of this mayhem. Without funds, these organizations are unable to pay fighters, purchase weapons, or instill fear like they formerly did. And the next phase begins when they are feeble and scurrying. Elite Burkina Faso forces are reportedly preparing for covert operations and targeted attacks intended to permanently destroy these organizations while they are still recuperating from the financial setback. The move from defense to full-on offense is daring. The objective is to identify the source of the issue. This is when the exciting part begins. There are a number of frozen bank accounts that are stacked. We're talking about large sums of money that were purportedly transferred in from influential foreign backers in an attempt to purchase allegiance and destroy the nation from within. There are now discussions about better ways to use that money, such as providing Burkina Faso soldiers with the supplies and equipment they have been without for years. The military is currently overworked. Soldiers are lacking even the most basic necessities, and some of the individuals stranded in war-torn areas have had to make do with leaves, indeed. Captain Traore hasn't held back when assigning blame. He has criticized previous administrations for allowing things to collapse, claiming that they prioritized power over public safety. He is currently attempting to quickly reverse the script. A travel ban for all 113 individuals connected to the banking network is a significant move. This implies that you cannot hide out overseas or leave the nation. The government will know exactly where to look for explanations if they are needed. Nevertheless, there is one name that everyone keeps bringing up. Traore replaced Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. Some claim that he is the one orchestrating all of this. Burkina Faso and Togo are currently engaged in intense negotiations in an attempt to repatriate a man who many suspect of being the mastermind of a perilous scheme. However, it's still unclear if he will be turned over in reality. In African politics, influential people aren't always held accountable. Their cross-border ties and high-ranking friends provide them with just enough protection to get away with it. However, things could be different this time. It appears that Captain Ibrahim Traore and his group are committed to breaking that long-standing trend. No more evading accountability or hiding behind titles. Furthermore, this goes beyond simply tidying up and reprimanding a few bad performers. They are facing an intricate network of foreign meddling, espionage, and corruption. Disassembling it is a full-on mission rather than a one-step task. One major concern remains, though. Will Traore be able to eliminate the greatest challenger to his authority before it's too late? What appeared to be a local power struggle has now grown into something much more significant, as stated by the National Security Minister of Burkina Faso. This was more than a private meeting of irate former leaders, Mahamadou Sana. The conspiracy was extensive and extended beyond the boundaries of Burkina Faso. According to intelligence assessments, some of the main participants were discreetly organizing out of the public eye in Ghana, Nigeria, and Côte d'Ivoire when the conspiracy spread there. From those safe havens, they worked toward a common objective: to overthrow Captain Traore and dismantle his government one piece at a time. Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba was at the heart of it all. Yes, in 2022, Damiba was removed by Traore. The same person who many believed had quietly departed the political scene and is currently residing in Togo. He might not have departed at all, it turns out. According to officials, Damiba spent the entire time working behind the scenes. He wasn't acting alone, though. He reportedly assembled a group of former ministers, politicians, and even some media insiders. Together, they began disseminating specific stories in an effort to sway public opinion against Traore and raise money from domestic and international donors. This is where it became more than just a political squabble, though. According to reports, the plot partnered with deadly insurgency organizations, which are well known throughout the Sahel for their brutal attacks and use of terror methods. Investigators claim that rather than merely observing, these organizations were provided with resources, targets, and assistance. Their job is to instill terror and turmoil, strike civilians, military installations, and even official sites where the damage would be greatest. According to the authorities, they had plans and maps that showed precisely what they intended to strike: the presidential palace, the drone operations center, and a military base close to Manga. Their objective was straightforward. They wanted to scare the public, launch quickly, and give the impression that Traore's leadership was failing under duress. However, they had other weapons besides bombs and guns. Investigators claim to have also discovered a cunning media campaign. It was intended to send out messages implying that Traore was overburdened and incapable of protecting the nation. If people thought that, it might tilt the scales, cause them to start questioning, and cause them to ask someone else to take the initiative. The story was meant to go like this: violence, terror, bewilderment, and finally a struggle for control. It was power politics on a whole other level, not simply politics. This was no last-minute, hurried coup attempt. This was meticulously constructed over several months, with each component designed to strike quickly, forcefully, and simultaneously. Then there was a significant development. A few arrests in nearby Niger revealed the truth. Suspects allegedly revealed information during interrogation, including how long it had been moving, who was involved, how the funds were transferred, and what the actual objective was. Traore's administration responded by launching a huge counteroffensive to destroy the remaining portion of the network. Families of suspected plotters have been urged by Burkina Faso authorities to come forward with whatever information they may have, no matter how minor. Additionally, they are cautioning the general public to remain vigilant in case trouble tries to lurk in plain sight. To be clear though, this goes beyond merely preventing a power grab. This is substantially larger, Captain Ibrahim Traore said. It's about ridding the nation of corruption, bringing traitors to justice, and starting over. Oh, and you're obviously addicted if you're still watching this video. Before we go any further, feel free to hit the like button. This is where reality sets in. Rumors of foreign intervention in Burkina Faso's predicament have been dismissed as conspiracy theories for months. However, that plot is now beginning to take the form of a well-thought-out scheme. A more sinister, well-thought-out scheme designed to simultaneously rock Burkina Faso from the inside and the outside. Several nations have already accused France of stoking the insurgency in the region, including Mali and Burkina Faso. However, recent rumors indicate that the intention was to replace Traore with someone more practical rather than only causing trouble, someone who is prepared to accommodate foreign interests. The plan is to arm them, give them confidence boosts, and employ rebel groups like chess pieces. Then allow them to start a violent outburst. Panic and instability would engulf the nation. People would be in dire need of peace. Then Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba reappears with a bang. The guy Traore overthrew in 2022 was abruptly recast as the savior who might rescue Burkina Faso from the disaster that his allies helped bring about. The rebel attacks would cease as if by magic. Damiba's followers will come from abroad. The populace would be informed that this was the one way to achieve peace. Traore, however, sees right through it. He is aware that the nation will be trapped in an endless cycle if this strategy is implemented. Ordinary citizens are caught in the crossfire of decisions they never requested, in a loop where external powers play puppet master. Burkina Faso cannot afford to go through that cycle once more. Traore is now pursuing two goals. He is first taking the battle directly to the rebel organizations. These are not merely sporadic assailants, rather, they are instruments in a worldwide power struggle. And he makes it very plain that fear will not govern Burkina Faso. Villages are being safeguarded, military activities are being increased, and the populace is being made aware that their government is not giving up. However, battling rebels is insufficient. The possibility of another Damiba attack remains. There is always a chance of another coup while he is hiding in Togo. Traore is therefore putting a lot of effort into getting him extradited, not merely so that he can stand trial, but to prevent him from drawing more strings from the darkness. And this script has already been written by history. In 1987, Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso, was shot dead in a coup headed by Blaise Compaoré, a fellow countryman. For 27 years, Compaoré remained in power. People were struggling to survive during that time. The nation became more impoverished, and its reliance on outside help increased. There was hope for justice when Compaoré was eventually overthrown, but that hope was dashed in 2016. Compaoré Ivorian citizenship was granted by Côte d'Ivoire President Alassane Ouattara, preventing him from being returned to face accusations. He is still free in exile despite having been given a life sentence for his involvement in Sankara's murder. History shouldn't repeat itself under Traore's watch. Things are different this time. In contrast to Blaise Compaoré, Paul-Henri Damiba will not simply walk away. Regardless of what they did, Burkina Faso's powerful leaders were able to avoid difficulty for years. They were protected and had connections. And fairness? Apparently, it never caught up. The previous pattern is now being broken though. a line is being drawn in the sand by Traore's administration. The individuals who contributed to the nation's disintegration. We will hold accountable those who incited violence, incited terror, and conspired in secret to overthrow the government. And at the top of that list is Damiba. However, this narrative goes beyond bank account freezes and arrests. It is starting a much larger national dialogue. Everyone is arguing about one question: should those who commit crimes against national security be executed? In 2018, Burkina Faso abolished the death penalty. However, now that the recent coup plot and all the betrayals have come to light, several members of the military-led government are reconsidering their positions. They contend that there need to be severe repercussions when someone attempts to turn an entire nation into a war zone, killing people and shattering the peace. And their assessment of the danger is accurate. This was no innocuous political ploy. The plotters weren't organizing speeches and discussions. They were targeting civilians, constructing ambushes, and circulating false information. Their goal was to seize power by inciting violence throughout the nation. However, they strengthened Traore rather than driving him away. What was supposed to be a covert scheme to get him out of his seat ended up being a huge oversight. It made the traitors clear. It made clear to the public who had been working in the background, pulling strings while feigning concern for the nation. Traore's hold on power is stronger than ever, rather than eroding. In order to ensure that a similar incident never occurs again, he is exploiting the failed coup as justification for his ambitious new reforms. Those who once murmured behind closed doors, believing no one would dare touch them, are now the ones on the other side. They are now frantically trying to make agreements while running in fear. However, it could be too late. Once a guy in uniform dispensing commands, Damiba is now the target of the law. He is charged of planning to overthrow the very leader who succeeded him, with the assistance of armed rebels and international supporters. His name used to be associated with military might, but it has since been linked to treachery. A man who, rather than gaining the trust of the populace, attempted to regain power by breaking the law. However, there is still a significant question. Will Togo shield him? This has happened before. Check out Compaoré, accused of aiding in the murder of the adored revolutionary from Burkina Faso. In Côte d'Ivoire, Thomas Sankara discovered a safe haven next door. He was granted citizenship by the Ivorian authorities, so preventing any potential for extradition. Even after receiving a life sentence, he evaded trial for years. Could that same old playbook's next chapter be Damiba? It won't be just one individual facing accusations if Burkina Faso is successful in bringing him back. It will send a strong message throughout the continent. No matter how strong they are, no one can influence a country's future and expect to be forced into exile. Already, the courts are preparing. Their goal is to lead by example. Not only for Damiba, but also for anyone else considering selling their nation to foreigners or pursuing power at all costs. Additionally, Damiba won't be alone herself in court. In relation to the conspiracy, 113 additional people have been taken into custody. It is anticipated that each of them will face a protracted court battle. The administration isn't playing around. They've made it quite evident. The whole force of the law will be used to anyone found to have betrayed the nation, whether through a takeover plot or providing secrets to foreign powers. No shortcuts. There are no exceptions. They're not only threatening either. They are referring to some serious legislation and taking out the books. Among them is Law 025-2018, is included in the Penal Code of Burkina Faso. The word sedition isn't mentioned. However, it does outline the precise consequences for anyone who attempt to undermine national security. Espionage, treason, attempting to overthrow the government. These offenses have serious repercussions. Typically, lengthy prison terms. However, another option is now being considered. In 2018, Burkina Faso made the decision to abolish the death penalty. It was a daring action intended to protest severe punishment. However, that choice is now being questioned once more. Following the discovery of a huge scheme involving over 100 individuals to overthrow the government, including international backers and insiders. According to certain officials, perhaps the penalty should be commensurate with the offense. They contend that penalizing those who have already been caught is not the only solution. The goal is to make a strong statement to anyone else who might be considering doing the same. When those who are supposed to defend your nation are plotting its destruction in secret, what do you do? How can the next wave of treachery be prevented before it starts? Some people think that bringing back the worst punishment is the solution. According to them, it's the only thing powerful enough to thwart any future conspirators. However, other people think that executions are not necessary for true justice. They believe that justice can still be served while preserving the advancements of recent years by imposing life sentences. President Ibrahim Traore is now the center of attention. He has been quite explicit. He will not put up with those in his own system attempting to undermine the nation's basis. Furthermore, although he hasn't stated clearly if he is in favor of reinstatement of the death penalty, many people think he's giving it some serious thought, especially considering how big and dangerous this conspiracy is. The 113 individuals who were taken into custody. They consist of intelligence officers, senior officials, and former military commanders. They were not strangers. On the inside, they were silently causing mayhem. The big question now arises: what kind of punishment is appropriate for them? Is it sufficient to lock them up? Or does the situation demand a stronger message, one that cautions others against even considering taking the same route? Because if a network this big was able to function covertly for this long, who's to say that there aren't more still in hiding, watching, waiting, and making plans? And whether those covert traitors remain afraid or have the courage to attempt again may depend on what the government does next. Drop your thoughts in the comments section below, and please subscribe for more.